You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. One player we were keeping an eye on today as far as National Signing Day was Jamel Howard, the defensive lineman out of the Chicago area, who was previously committed to Wisconsin, decommitted, reopened his recruitment. He did take a visit to LSU, but ultimately has made his announcement, and he is recommitted to the Badgers. So he will play for new coach Luke Fickell there in Madtown. So Jamel Howard picks Wisconsin, which means LSU will not sign a player on National Signing Day. First time ever LSU will not sign a player on the February date of in National Signing Day. Brody Miller, of course, of The Athletic, going to have to join us for a couple of minutes here, talk a little LSU roster. How are you, dude?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me as always. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. It's our pleasure. Is today slow and boring?
Yeah, I guess so, and I will not complain about it. Throwback to all the February and December signing days. I used to have to wake up at 6 a.m. and wait for faxes, and today it's just a normal day, which I guess is probably what the future is going to be for the most part.
I think we always get into this, for the last 5 years or however long it's been, this question of, well, do you like it? Do you prefer it? And I don't really care because
I don't care.
it's just what it is. So I guess my real question is, how has or have you noticed the schedule change affect the way LSU has built its program or recruited? Have you noticed at all anything like that?
That's a good question. I think there's an element of, and this might not answer your question if I'm being honest, but I do think there's generally an element with LSU of never sign a guy just to sign them. Under Kelly, these last two cycles, I think that's a very clear theme of when you bring someone in, it's because you need it or because this guy fits something that they very much want to build. And I think, for example, not signing anyone today, and yeah, they would have liked Jamel Howard, didn't work out, but there was no, we need to sign this, and I think it's probably more of a good thing, but I think there's an element of that was just kind of getting your ducks in a row in the off season. You're not necessarily chasing all these, massive 5 stars down the wire and these big NIL deals. I think there's some of that, but it's a really good question. I'm not sure we'll find the real answer until there's a little more data to sift through there.
So when we look at the class that LSU has signed, though, the 5th highest ranked high school class, the number 1 transfer portal class, do you think that there are still needs or wants on this roster?
Yeah, it's a great question because my quick answer is just from a stepping back, looking at the program. I don't think there is a glaring, you got to patch this for the rest of the offseason. I think that's a great place to be. Omar Spade's still the last one that was really there. Are there micro things that they know they have to handle better going forward? Yes, definitely. I think defensive tackle, we'll be the first to say, they have some guys split outside of them in the last week or two before last signing day. And, they brought in a bunch of young defensive tackles in the portal, which did a good job, but I think they'll definitely need to make sure they stock up high school-wise next year at the tackle, no doubt. Linebacker could never hurt to get another body there, but there's still 4 deep that you like there. I think they will never turn down a great tight end if they can find one, but again, they have 4 guys there and they like Mason Taylor. I think the other one would certainly be center. We've seen them look at Shakai Clark. We saw them look at Renfro out of Cincinnati. I think there's definitely Charles Turner just won an SEC West title as starting center. There is no desperate need, but that's the only spot where it's okay, might make sense to, if you can, get better there. But not, I think because, corner's going to probably have some growing pains this year, of course, but I give them a lot of credit for the way that LSU patched corner, but in a way that wasn't making sure they had to do this every year. Yeah. Where last year it was pretty much 3- and 4-year guys, and this time it was a bunch of redshirt freshmen, a bunch of sophomores, junior, and it's making sure that, okay, next high school class, you get it going back to normal, you don't have to do that again. So I give them credit for how they've done it for the most part.
Brody Miller is with us on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. What about quarterback? Do you think there's any possibility, depending on what may happen in the spring, that they're still in that market?
I will never rule that out, obviously. I think, you know as much as me that Darren Nussmeier, all indications have been that he plans on staying, and that is what the LSU staff believes. But the LSU staff is also the first one to tell you, yeah, we're aware that, he's getting calls. They're aware that he is an SEC or at least a Power 5 caliber starting quarterback right now, and you can't exactly begrudge him if he decides to chase an opportunity to go start somewhere right now. You can't. So I think you would be naive to think there's no chance. And of course, if that happens, yeah, you probably do have to. But then that gets hard, right? Because who out there is like, yes, in summer of 2023, I am transferring and I'm doing that to go be a backup. That's hard to fill too. So I as of right now, I don't think they're going to be searching for a fourth, at least what I was told kind of when Walker Howard transferred, so they're not looking for a fourth guy. But yeah, you obviously have to keep an eye on the Nussmeier situation, of course.
Well, you said that teams are calling, and I had kind of heard even before the SEC championship game that maybe Nussmeier exiting stage left was far more likely. And then what transpired in the SEC championship game transpired. And then, it's why I think all of this remains very fluid. Is there anything that you could shed light on as far as I'm not trying to kick an anthill or a rumor mill here, but a probability or likelihood of maybe looking around, or how the LSU coaching staff handles the quarterback situation in the spring?
Yeah, and I'll admit that there's some things, I won't even pretend I really have everything behind the scenes. But, I think it's reasonable to conservatively put it at like 20 or 30. Does that sound I'm talking out of my butt? That doesn't sound crazy. But I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes. That I think there's an element of, when Jaden Daniels was debating whether he was going to come back, there was definitely an aspect of that of, do I have Garrett Nussmeier on my behind? Do I have him pushing for that starting job? I think that was a tricky part of what Jaden Daniels wanted to do. And everything I've gathered is I think Kelly and Ben Brock and Sloan and all of them did a pretty good job of kind of appeasing everybody. And I think it's fair that, one, Nussmeier understands he is the next guy, but two, I always go back to Kelly's answer after the bowl, kind of unprovoked on this part, saying, yes, it is Jaden Daniels' QB1, but when you have two great quarterbacks, you have to be open-minded. And that part wasn't provoked. And I think that will shed light to maybe there will be more rotating in the season. Maybe there will be a little more of a competition to an extent. And I think you saw in that bowl game how that isn't necessarily a deal breaker. It kind of worked well. That's a weird data point, but still. So I think it's complicated. But I also think I've always been told Nussmeier kind of gets it. He understands that there's nothing wrong with developing, but yeah, I would never rule out him leading.
He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Give him a follow there. You have a piece up at The Athletic right now about that the 2019 signing class, kind of looking at 4 years and saying, okay, what do we know? What was the impetus for doing this piece?
I think, we knew that, well, one, let's be honest, it was a slow signing day, so it was good to find something signing day related. Right. But, yeah, I think it's an example of it both sheds a light on what went wrong for Ed Orgeron and sheds a light a little bit on kind of what's so far, really small sample, but what's been going right so far with Brian Kelly, which is, that 19 class, that was the class that, gave Ed Orgeron solid ground again. Yes, the 18 season made him safe again, but, Stingley committing in the summer was really what was like, it's going to be okay for a little while. There was a lot of that in that class. Getting Emery, getting Thomas, it was such a big deal for LSU. And you look back and be like, this is where a lot of programs go wrong. And every program deals with this, by the way. There's a tough thing that we all know of. The better players you can get, make it so sometimes you get away from what you were doing well. I think Clemson, you see that to some extent the last few years, that once they were able to really start getting the best of the best, maybe some shortcuts, maybe some, you see fake 5-stars a lot, or fake top 50 guys a lot, that they're rated somewhere, but Bama and Georgia don't really want them, and I think that happens a lot, or guys that, it's unfair to be all these kids are bad kids, but maybe character issues that maybe you'll look past, because man, it would look better on your resume to get the number 5 class as opposed to number 8. And I think that's a lot of what happened there, because the numbers are staggering with that class that looks so good, even that first year. And then it's 9 of the 11 top 200 guys were basically either gone or just not really factors by about midway through that third season, which is normally when that's your team, And I think that's in the 2020 class with Gilbert, Rick, that you see to some extent. It was a real thing, I think, toward the end of the Orgeron era, and I think that's what Kelly's been changing. Gives them too much credit, but there has been obviously more of an emphasis on the right guys, the guys that are going to help build the culture you want.
2020 class is bonkers. You got nothing out of that class. It is. Ojulari,
but yeah. It's a weak one.
Okay, let me not use a superlative. Or speak in absolutes. You've got next to nothing out of that class. Yes, Kayshon Boutte was there. Yes, B.J. Ojulari. But I believe it's like 2/3 of that class were gone before this year started. Didn't make it to their third year. It's staggering. I mean, that's how a roster falls apart.
It's true.
And I just noticed I was looking at your 2019 piece. Peter Parrish was the quarterback.
I mean, there was a streak of like the guy who was like 80th up to the guy who was like 190th. You know, like 5 or 6 in a row were off the team for some off the field issue. It was like consistent. And then obviously you have your misses, you know, your Cardells, your disciplined guys, or like an Emery, you know, which is complicated but hasn't worked out. It was just wild, and I don't know where I was going with that, but it is just, I think it's signifying because there were Cole Tracy, huge success. Cade York. You know, Jay Ward, really good player. Cordell Flott, really good player. But when those are your home runs in a class, that's just not a good sign.
Yeah. Well, it's the transfer portal. It has just changed the way that we converse about college football and how rosters are built, and that's okay. It's just the reality of the situation. You got to use it to your advantage. So, Brody Miller, again, The Athletic. He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Give him a follow. Really good piece up right now, kind of looking back at the 2019 class. And we're looking ahead to spring football, which is right around the bend. We appreciate it, man. Enjoy some downtime.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.